I am so excited to be talking today to Davina Kotulski. I don't know when she sleeps. She's a licensed psychologist. She's a life coach. She's a spiritual advisor. She's an award-winning author, and she's also a nationally known LGBT rights leader, like leader. And so when do you sleep?
Um, every night, which I think is important actually. Getting 8 hours of sleep allows you to do more and be more. And when you're meditating and also making sure that you prioritize exercise, you have time for the other things. I actually believe that the more self-care you do, the more things kind of work synergistically and you get more done.
I believe that too. When I take a break, when I'm trying to ram, the square peg into the hole, nothing
Mhm.
works. I end up having to do all that work over again, or I make someone irritated, or I'm irritated, or so I really appreciate you opening with that. I think a lot of people hear a resume like yours and they do think she must never sleep. She must be always on the grind. She must always be, looking for that next thing to kind of make happen. And you've written a lot of books that exemplify that that's actually not how it works. Let's talk about the Manna Paradigm Shift, because I love the story behind that. If I could do a lead in to that, it all started in a synagogue in Venice, Italy.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kim. So yeah, I was in a synagogue in Venice, Italy, and I saw the picture of a hand coming down from the sky and sprinkling, basically crumbs of food, nourishment. And it is the story of how when the Hebrews had left, they had left their enslavement in Egypt and gone out into the desert. But when they got to the desert, they realized, well, even with enslavement, there were flesh pots to warm themselves by. They knew where their food was coming. They had a roof over their heads. And so they started to lament their freedom and cherish the golden handcuffs, so to speak. They cherished the tools of the slavery. And they got mad at Moses and mad at God, and they wanted to go back. And they cried out. And God heard their cries, according to the story, and said, I will give you, manna from heaven, which means I will give you what you need day by day. Whatever anyone needs according to their appetites, I will provide. But you can't hoard it. You can't take yesterday's manna and eat it tomorrow. You have to be with what you have today. And I just thought that's such a profound teaching that when we show up and we step out in faith and follow what is true for us, the universe provides for us. We have to trust. We're not going to get more than we need. We're not going to get less than we need, but we're going to get our needs met moment by moment and day by day.
And I'm not a highly religious person in sort of the
Me either.
ecclesiastic sense, but I use the word God. And I have a friend who always says to me, and I repeat it to myself when I get into sort of those tizzies of why isn't this happening for me and why isn't this happening as fast as I want it to? I say, God is my source.
Yeah.
God is my source. God will not give me more than I need at any given time. And so then it's just kind of going into the acceptance. So when you were on this trip to Italy,
Hmm.
you realized that the job you were in was a great paycheck. It was like, the life, but it wasn't going to fulfill you. And you came back and you took some action.
Yeah, I had been working as a psychologist for the federal government for over 12 years, and I was kind of at that halfway point where sometimes people get where they're like, okay, I'm halfway in, I have another 12 years to go, and then I can retire with all the, three-fourths of my income, the pension, the benefits, etc. And I realized that if I did that, while I would have all those survival things in the end, it would kill my soul ultimately. It
Mm.
wasn't that the job was bad. I did a lot of great things, but it was that I had outgrown it. I had outgrown it, and now I was spinning my wheels, and it was, having negative effects overall on my well-being. And so I realized that in order to continue to grow, I needed to step outside of that. And I also realized that it was a time where I was being called to, again, I'm not a religious person either, but I'm a spiritual person. And it was to put my faith in something outside of corporations, the government, money, the man, so to speak,
The
and
man.
really trust life, that life loved me and life wanted to take care of me, and to not limit myself to, only what keeps me safe is a pension or a 401k or a bi-monthly paycheck.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And there's those voices, and they are very patriarchal. Be happy with what you have.
Mhm.
You don't rock the boat. Don't shake up the tree. So you did something for 12 years, and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. I want to do something else. And it's like, there's I believe that we make it really difficult for ourselves
Mhm.
to make that change, right? Like, and if you look at everything you had to shift, I mean, you left a marriage, right, that you've been in for a long time. You
Yeah.
moved to Los Angeles from the Bay Area. You left a job that did have security. That probably didn't feel amazing in the start, right? Talk a little bit about what you had to go through.
So I want to acknowledge and honor that when we make changes, I mean, we're uncomfortable. We're facing risks. We're taking ourselves out of our comfort zone, and fear is normal. It's a normal part of any sort of transition or change. It's just that we can't let the fear and the discomfort stop us from
Mhm.
making those changes. And so you have to know what's your level of risk, what's your comfort level, and get support through the process so that you don't just go back to whatever it is that you wanted to make the change, whatever was spurring the need to make the change in the first place. Um, so yeah, I have leapt without a net. I've leapt with smaller nets, bigger nets. Um, it's always uncomfortable. That is normal. But over time, there are things that you can do. And actually, in both of my books, It's Never Too Late to Be Yourself and The Manna Paradigm Shift, I talk about how do you prepare yourself to make changes? What are the things that you can do so that you're more resilient when you make that leap? But of course, it's uncomfortable.
So it
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be black and white. There could be some preparation, and that's what you explain in your books, a little
Yeah.
bit of preparing. Let me ask you this, and you might not know the answer to this, but do you think that people typically like move the needle a little bit, or do you think people typically take the big jump or do nothing? Are there three camps?
I think that if you're making gradual change, over and over, and you're listening and you're noticing, you're showing up, and you're doing the changes that you need to make. Sometimes that's not enough. I mean,
Mm.
sometimes that's enough. Other times the universe will say you're too comfortable, and it will create situations. People, their marriages will end as a surprise to them, or they'll be laid off from a job, or something will happen. Sometimes the universe pushes us out, just like the bird that gets too comfortable in the nest, and its mother is like, okay, it's time to fly. So sometimes we get to choose the change, and we can decide what, like you said, how far do we want to move the needle. Other times the universe makes those changes for us, decides for us. I think it's best to build those muscles and know what you're comfortable with, and try to make changes that do make you uncomfortable, but not that make you crazy or unstable. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was able to make some pretty big changes because I do some pretty big lifting, emotional lifting, life coaching. I take care of myself, and so I know, like, okay, I'm ready for this.
Yeah. It wasn't just like F it, some stuff in a suitcase, and you're out the door on the next train to Georgia,
Right.
right?
But if you
But
stuff,
some people could feel it.
stuff, it's like the Bruce Springsteen song or whatever. Went out for a drive in Baltimore, Jack, and never came. Whatever. Like that can
Right.
happen to people. They can
Yeah.
just split, or break. Yeah.
Yeah, they can get desperate.
Hmm.
I did watch the YouTube video on the past life regression.
Oh,
I
neat.
haven't done like specifically that work. I've done, I think, as I mentioned, I've gone into the Akashic records and I've looked at and changed some of the records around.
Mhm.
So this kind of work, how does that assist someone in the process? Does that make them more aware or prepared for these types of big changes?
The past life regression work. I think the past life regression work is amazing because it offers a window into some of the ways that we're stuck, some of the ways that we are repeating patterns, and it can help us see sometimes like, oh wow, this is why I'm in this dynamic with this person. What do I need to do to change it so that we can have something fresh and new in this lifetime? Or do I need to, leave the relationship or whatever it is, or the job? It just helps people understand on a deeper level some of their motivations that they might not have been aware of, or that they are aware of but they don't understand why they're there. Why
Hmm.
is this fear here? Oh, I'm so afraid of letting my kids go because in my past life, my kids were taken away from me by slavers, or I lost my brother when I went to the fair with him and never found him again, and my parents, never forgave me. I mean, it's fascinating to hear some of people's past life stuff. So, and what unresolved things they have. So, with past life work, it's shining a light, getting insight, and then also doing a lot of forgiveness work, forgiving yourself for things that you did in a past life, and forgiving others for what they've done to you. And it sounds really strange, but when people do that forgiveness work and they forgive themselves for whatever they've done in a past life, it allows them to love themselves and have better self confidence in this lifetime. Or when they can forgive somebody else for something they did in a past life, there's less resentment and more open heartedness. It's quite
Absolutely.
profound.
Yeah, I was a witch when I went back into this. I think it was a regression to some degree. I was a witch with two children and they both had dysentery, and I think there was a nervous energy, like if I had used my voice and I was being punished for it, and and so everybody was going down with the ship. And so it's sort of like, don't use your voice. That's
Right.
why that's why it took 40 something years for me to open my mouth. You know what I mean?
Right.
Say anything.
And there, and you think of all of the women that were burnt at the stake or hung for talking about, plant medicine, alternative healing, just having human rights, hundreds. And so there are so many people that are afraid to speak up. And then there's the Inquisition and what went on there. It's so interesting. I was talking to a client of mine the other day who is a coaching client, talking about how when she was a teenager, the fire sparked. She was at a friend's house, and a fire sparked up and almost set her friend on fire. And and she was her response was, when she saw that her friend was almost burning, she had the sense of, oh my God, what is wrong? Like, I don't believe in God anymore. The fact that her friend almost burnt to death. And we talked about it, and I was like, well, she didn't calm down from that. It never went away. And it wasn't that the fire came out of the fireplace. It was that her friend almost burnt to death. And it was almost like she had a memory of
Mm.
someone else burning to death in front of her. And so when she went to a psychologist at 15 or 16, and they wanted to talk about the fire, she didn't realize that it was something beyond this lifetime. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. I mean, I don't want to just believe it's just me, Kim, this like lump of flesh,
mhm,
like getting up in the morning. I want to believe that there's more going on. Like we've
yeah.
got other lives and we've got super consciouses and subconsciouses. And it just makes life more interesting to get up and explore.
Hmm.
There's so many layers, right? And there's people that are into that and there's people that are not into that. And I just think it makes life, that much more interesting,
Have you seen the Surviving Death show on Netflix right now? It's a six-part series on reincarnation, ghosts, contact from beyond. It's an
no,
amazing series. Yeah, I highly
no.
recommend it. Highly
Oh,
recommend
amazing. Okay,
it.
I'll have to check that out. So we talk about books on this show, as you know,
Yeah.
and you are a prolific writer. Let's talk about the different books and your experience as a writer.
Okay.
Did it get better?
Yeah, it did. So the very first book I wrote is called Why You Should Give a Damn About Gay Marriage. I wrote it in
Love that title.
2003. Basically, I was out advocating for the right for same-sex couples to get married, and I was having the same conversations with clipboards in my hand, trying to get people to sign up or get engaged and get involved. And I was saying the same things over and over again. I was relaying harrowing stories of how same-sex couples had been denied the right to be at one another's bedside when one died, or they were losing their children. I was helping people understand that, which they didn't know, people that had marriage licenses, that when they had a marriage license, it came with 1,138 federal marriage rights and hundreds of state rights, and that, like a driver's license, when you cross state lines, you still had all of those rights, and that same-sex couples had none of them. And so rather than saying the same thing over and over again, the opportunity came up to write a book about it and to be able to hand people the book so that they could understand and get other people involved and caring, and so that it wasn't just an emotional knee jerk, no, no, we're against gay marriage, but to understand all of the aspects, all of the reasons why same-sex couples needed to have equality, and that it was more than just a piece of paper. And so it was a very guided experience. I wrote the book in like 4.5 months. It just came through. I had been speaking about it. I knew what kind of stories I wanted to tell. And then I'd be like, okay, I need to write something about LGBT people in the military and same-sex couples that are where one's a veteran. And I would just kind of like meditate on it, put that out there, and then I would get an email, hey, have you met so-and-so? You should talk to them. And I would go and spend time with them and hear their story. And it was just amazing. It was so guided. And it literally went to press right as Gavin Newsom was allowing same-sex couples to marry in California the first time. And I was in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, on May 17th, when, at midnight, when same-sex marriage became legal in the state of Massachusetts. I was there on book tour promoting the book. So it was
Oh,
very divinely guided. Yeah,
what a great town to be in, too.
it was amazing. And got to watch the first couples go in and get their marriage licenses. It was being a part of
Oh,
history, watching history happen.
did
Um,
that help your book sales?
yeah, I think it did. I mean, I think that people wanted to know, and young people were getting a copy of the book, and they were doing their high school papers on it. They were doing college papers on it. And it helped people understand,
Mm.
what went into it. So I think it was a very enriching experience. And then I sort of was working on a follow-up to that book. And then unfortunately the press that I was working with went out of business. And so I basically ended up having the experience of self-publishing that book because they canceled all their contracts with everybody midstream, which was very unfortunate.
Oh,
Um,
with this first book,
the second book,
the second book. What was the title of the second
uh,
book?
Love Warriors, The Rise of the Marriage Equality Movement and Why It Will Prevail.
So this was the follow-up.
Yeah, yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
And then you shifted gears for books 3 and 4, right?
Yeah, then I wrote a novel.
And you wrote a
Wrote a
novel.
novel about my work in prison. It's called Behind Barbed Eyes, and it's also an audible book that was read by an actor. And it's about the journey of two protagonists. One is a psychologist, and one is an armed bank robber who's doing time. And it's a psychological journey, a healing journey. And yeah, so that's out there, and that was, trying out novel writing and about a subject. Again, I worked as a psychologist in a women's prison for 12 and a half years, and wanted to kind of show another side of that and beyond. And I started writing it before Orange is the New Black is out.
Which was
Yeah,
so great. Which was
yeah,
so great. I
so
love
great.
your energy. I love your like, I decided to try that out. I decided to try writing something that was fiction, and I decided to try writing this and try writing that. And that's an amazing attitude when it comes to books versus like this has to be my breakthrough thing and I better get this right and this better be perfect and I better know exactly how to do this because really honestly that doesn't get books written. Like it doesn't get
No,
books written. And if you have to sit there for a lot, like there, it takes a lot of time. So you better be, being in a good frame of mind is advisable.
yes.
It's advisable.
And writing is rewriting, as we know. You're going to write, you're going to rewrite, you're going to change things. That's okay. And you want you're absolutely right, Kim. If we write from a place of perfectionism, it will not get done. So you just write, you put yourself out there, and you just keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
don't worry about the results. The results will come. Maybe it will be the next New York Times bestseller. Maybe it will, reach a couple thousand people and they'll love it and it will take them out of their circumstances, or it will open their minds in some way, or they'll laugh. And that's good too. It's like, but if you need to write something, if you need to share something, it's just so important to do it, and to
For
just put it
you.
out there for you.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
just you to get it out there. It's very cathartic.
Yeah.
I have a book that I want you to write, although you're probably going to tell me that someone's already written it.
Okay.
I've been hearing this over and over again, and I do have, daughters, and I've been hearing this a lot from teen mothers of teenagers, is that our children are all saying they're bi,
Mm.
and none of them have had any sexual experiences,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
literally none. What's going on?
Mm. Um, well, I think that we're quite honestly, I think we're evolving as a human race where we know that love is love, and that we fall in love with people, not genitalia.
Yeah.
And especially when you could look at it from a past life place too, that when you meet people that you have a soul connection with, you have a soul connection with them, and that goes beyond physical plumbing. And I love Dr. Sylvia Rue, a colleague of mine, always says, when the hearts fit, the parts fit, you know.
Oh, that is amazing. My children are my greatest teachers,
Mm.
and they're light years ahead of me. I am a provincial New England, old school heterosexual, and I have no biases against anybody. It's just but they make me think. They make me go, "Am I? Who said I was? Like, wait a minute. How can she say she's not? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on?" I think a lot of our old school parents are sitting here who, like, and I'm not even really old school. I'm super evolved. Are sitting here
Mhm.
going, "What's going on for us?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some different options here."
I think that again, a lot of times some extremists will say, it's a choice. And
Mm,
I think the choice is, are you going to follow your heart or not?
mm,
And the choice is, are you going to restrict yourself based on what other people's expectations of you are? I think when we fall in love, it's not a choice. It's our heart. And I think for many of us, we might be more inclined one way or another. So like, if we look at Alfred Kinsey talked about the Kinsey scale, and, 0 to 6, and most people don't identify their Kinsey scale. But I think many people might be predominantly on the edges, and many people are going to be in the middle. It's just like you might be more inclined to be heterosexual, but there might be a 1 in 1 millionth chance that you meet somebody and of the same sex, and boom, there you are. I am definitely, gay and more inclined to be attracted to women, but
right.
I am not. I know, never say never. There could be a possibility that some soul comes along, and
Who knows?
does that mean I'm not gay? No, it just means that there's something more or different that we don't comprehend. And I think younger people, they're not labeling themselves in that way. Even if, like, they say, okay, I'm bi, but then they end up being predominantly attracted to the same sex, or they say they're bi and they're predominantly attracted to, the other sex, not the opposite, but the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna, they're not gonna keep themselves from being fully self-expressed.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I've watched my evolution through it, and I've watched other parents that I know's evolution through it. And, it's made me think. And I loved our first conversation, and I didn't mean to throw a curveball at you at the end here,
Oh,
but
that's fine.
I've loved everything we've talked about. So I want to leave us there on a heart note. Thank you so much for coming here today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. And I'm so sorry that it's very warm in this room, and so I'm noticing I'm just glowing. I'm glowing from this conversation, you know. And that is also the joy of menopause.
The
Yay!
joy of menopause. Let's hit every button in the interview.
Let's just do it.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kim. Take care.